Hello, America, and welcome to the program. Just got back from a trip to Italy to see the Shroud of Turin because the Pope had died, and he's the actual holder of the key for the Shroud of Turin. I wasn't able to actually, I got close to it, but I wasn't actually, I wasn't able to manhandle it, which I think it was supposed to happen. But it was a trip, not just because of what the experts say, that it may never be seen again in public because they don't have the ability to show it at this time. I'm not sure that a trip like this is even going to be possible much longer if Europe continues down the path that they are going. I was in England and also Italy, and it has changed. Just a few short months ago, the United States and Europe, we were on the same exact path. And the Trump administration now is busy fighting tooth and nail to ensure we never travel down those dark roads again. A lot of things happened while I was gone, including one big one that I want to highlight after the break. And it is a direct reminder of just how lucky we are that Donald Trump got into office because you, the voter, ejected the Democrats from every single branch of power in the federal government. But if I would have looked out the window on the way over, I would have seen Spain and Portugal. Well, I wouldn't have seen them because they were completely dark at night. You look down, there was nothing to see. A massive blackout rocked both countries. Locals were saying it was the worst power outage that they had ever witnessed in their lifetimes. Do you know how the BBC covered this? It brought people together. People were in the streets and they were all just, they were getting to know each other. Really? Really? People were without power at the bare minimum for 12 hours, some of them for almost a week. And it wasn't due to some massive snow and ice storm or even a heat wave. Pretty much everyone is blaming one thing, the sun. Now, that's what they started with. But I'll show you after the break. But it is amazing, the head-on collision that we just dodged when President Trump returned to the White House. But no one will get this more than the guest that I have coming on in just a few minutes. And it wasn't reported on in the way that I just reported on. It's insane. And it's because of the media. The media is the same media, that it's been for a very, very long time. They were busy as I was away on vacation, showing just their true colors and how out of touch they really are, sadly. And I am fighting back the tears just a little bit because as I was traveling, the most prestigious White House Correspondents' Dinner ever was happening. I saw just some clips of Alex Thompson. He's from Axios. He was speaking, and I just want you to see and hear what he said and watch the crowd as he's addressing the White House correspondents.
President Biden's decline and its cover-up by the people around him is a reminder that every White House, regardless of party, is capable of deception. But being truth tellers also means telling the truth about ourselves. We, myself included, missed a lot of this story.
No.
And some people trust us less because of it. We bear some responsibility for faith in the media being at such lows.
I love the one guy. Well, I mean, I'm not sure if he's like, well, I don't know if we really bear any responsibility whatsoever, or he's like, well, I think it may be a little bit more than a little responsibility. I mean, it looks like someone giving the benediction at a frickin' funeral. And it's their funeral, honestly. But they're listening. They're just not hearing any of it, but they are listening. So let's break some of this down. Axios's Thompson is now stating the obvious. After the fact, okay? And they know that this is a mea culpa that they had to admit to because everybody knows it. But did you hear who he pinned the blame on? He said that this story is a reminder that, quote, every White House, regardless of party, is capable of deception. Why, Jethro, I just won't believe it. Both sides could lie? Uh-huh. But what he was really saying here is, it's not our fault. We were deceived. Yeah. You know who's not going to believe that? Jesus when he comes. I took the mark of the beast. Absolutely. I was happy. I was actually injecting it into people's arms and foreheads, but I was deceived. It was their chosen side. They were the trusted source for everything, including human morality, economic policy, trade practices, energy infrastructure, climate hysteria, race relations, Ukraine, you name it. They took the word of the White House, and they didn't check a single fact because they were so good at lying, except half the country knew they're lying. It was the fact that they, the people supposedly in charge of holding the government accountable, were shock-faced, lied to. Yeah, by mean old Joe Biden and his pals, because he was so clever every day in his slippers and bathrobe. So it's not their fault. I mean, not at all their fault. And when Thompson admits that, this little psyops of all psyops regarding Biden's mental collapse contributed to why no one trusts them anymore, it was entertaining. It was really entertaining. I was, quite honestly, swiping left. Nope. But a lot of people were like, maybe, could be. I wonder what finally tipped them off to what the rest of us knew back in 2016. I mean, it's not like Joe Biden's eyeballs suddenly spontaneously filled with blood during a debate, while he was on stage or anything. No, actually, that did happen. Maybe that would have been one of your clues. The guy's eyes are filling with blood. He's either having a stroke or maybe he's the devil. I don't know, but I don't usually see people. It's like a gas tank. Bloop, 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 bloop. Now, did they just simply turn off every time Biden spoke? Yeah. That's actually what they did, because that's what they had to do. Here's a little compilation that we found from Western Lensman on X. Kind of catches them up on how with it Joe Biden really was. Watch for the deception.
A solid meeting with
Yes.
and Mitterrand from from France looked at me and said,
Mitterrand.
said, I'm going to be a president for everybody, whether you live in a red state or a green state. Anyway.
I wouldn't have caught it. I mean, I didn't see anything. What? The truth is, they were all in bed with the left-wing establishment. They hated Donald Trump so much, they didn't care if the guy actually turned into an actual, vegetable, like a stalk of broccoli. They still would have said, but he's sharper than any broccoli I've ever seen. So they said nothing. They listened to people when Jen Psaki told them, hey, what you're seeing with your own eyes and ears, don't believe it. Here she is just a few days ago.
I never saw that person, not a single time. I was in the Oval Office every day that was on that debate stage. I'm not a doctor. No. Aging happens quite quickly. Were things that people saw during that period of time that were similar to that or would have been in a category of that? I don't know, possibly. I still think it's like cover up is often like a crime, right? We're talking, when people use that term.
They say it's worse than the crime.
People use that term as they relate to Watergate or the covering up of not sharing public information about a war.
Yeah, and I'm not accusing anybody of a crime.
I understand, but other people have used that term, and I think it's a bit of a dangerous term.
I am. I'm saying it's a crime. The auto pen, you could track it now. The more he lost his marbles, the faster the auto pen was sending stuff out. You all knew. I don't care. My grandfather took his truck and backed it through the window of a Sambo's at one point. Now, I wasn't there, but I could have seen it coming when we took his keys to his truck away and we found him on the highway driving the lawnmower. Whose fault was it? Ours. We knew Grandpa was good. No, Joe Biden, he was fine. And then he gets on the debate stage and he's like, really, Jen? I don't think so. I mean, Grandpa was forgetting his own name there for a while. And dare I say it, seems like you are currently in a cover-up. But we can't have people accused of actual crimes in this country. I mean, but don't worry about that. The media won't push really hard for the actual crime angle. They never do that unless it's a Christian, or a conservative. And then they're like Sherlock Holmes. They're all over that crime scene that isn't really a crime scene. They're too busy attempting now to revise history and cover up their own culpability in this actual crime to worry about them really anymore. And nobody's watching. Now, there were a few journalists from outlets like the New York Times and Washington Post that are releasing, a book now that discusses how Biden's staff chose not to have him take a cognitive test out of fears of what it might reveal to the American public. I don't know. That sounds like a cover-up. So is the media finally admitting to the entire country how absolutely gullible and stupid they are? Or are they engaged in a cover-up? Which one is it, Jen? I mean, 100 days into the next administration, do they now feel they're safe to reacquaint themselves with the American readers and voters? No, they're not going to do that, and we're not that easy. As I was away on vacation, there were several things that happened. The entire country watched as the mainstream media continue to pummel Donald Trump on his use of tariffs. Now, I have to tell you, as I've told him many times, I'm not a fan of tariffs. However, I would like to see what's happening, and I will say I'll call the balls and the strikes. But look how the media is framing all of this. Check out the first paragraph of this article. Quote, the U.S. economy shrank in the first 3 months of the year, according to official data, triggering fears of an American recession. Okay, I get it. Possible, yeah. But if the economy contracts for 2 straight quarters, historically, that means we're in a recession. But wait, that historic precedent? No longer historic. Because I'm old enough to remember way back before I had white hair. I mean, I was in my 20s during the Joe Biden administration when the economy contracted 1.6% in the first quarter, followed that up with a contraction of 0.6% in the second quarter. And everybody said, are you kidding me? That's not a recession. Let me redefine what a recession really is. So please pipe down on redefining the recession and what it means. They did that, and now they're trying to revert back to, no, wait. What? We never said that. They are masters of, it is like watching Siegfried and Roy right before the tiger eats them. It really is. It's like, wow, they made that lion disappear until you're like, oh no, the lion's right behind them, about to eat them. None of them, including the media, had any issue at all with Joe Biden weaponizing the government or blatantly defying the Supreme Court, but they do now. Did they call him a dictator when he ignored the courts and proceeded to bribe young voters with forgiven college loans? Why would they? They didn't give a crap when Obama weaponized against journalists, used the IRS to persecute conservatives, or run guns to Mexico cartels and Islamists from Syria to Libya. The left, the media, look down in disdain on people like Ken Paxton for using the legal process to fight back against the unconstitutional practices from the Biden administration and Democrats. But now Donald Trump can barely blink. Did you see he blinked? You know what that means? It's a constitutional crisis. That's what it is. The legal system, is it operating as it should? He was blinking. Another example of this, again, happened while I was away. An Obama-appointed federal judge struck down another Trump move. What a surprise. This one was, I was on the plane. I laughed out loud at this. My wife is like, what are you laughing about? Everybody, let me read this story to you. It has something to do with the law firms of Perkins Coie. Now, if you remember, they were the ones that were right in the center of that dubious Trump dossier and Russiagate. And just like Jen Psaki was worried about the potential legal ramifications of even hinting at words like cover-up. Leftist judges just can't sit back and let their main foot soldiers get caught out in the open red-handed. So listen to this part of the judge's 102-page ruling. Here's what she said. Using the powers of the federal government to target lawyers for their representation of clients and avowed progressive employment policies in an overt attempt to suppress and punish certain viewpoints, however, is contrary to the Constitution. Why, Jeffro, get me one of them rope belts because I think I got to keep my pants on so we can go to town so I can say you're right. Eliminating lawyers as the guardians of our rule of law removes a major impediment to the path for more power. Really? We're going there now? I want to show you just a couple of things here. Look at these faces. These are all mugshots of President Trump's lawyers. Did any federal judge have an issue with these guys? Or is invoking the Constitution only relevant depending on which party holds the presidency? I don't know. I can't figure it out because I'm too dumb. I'm from a red state. One of the most recent news stories that happened while I was gone was the minerals deal, finally getting agreed on between Trump and Zelensky. We're taking the minerals. No. We now actually have an actual strategic interest in Ukraine. We now have an actual way to pay for the billions and billions of taxpayer dollars that were just gifted to one of the most corrupt countries in the world without sending a single accountant. We now have negotiating power and a way for Russia, Ukraine, and the U.S. to all come out winners. The fight for rare earth minerals is a fight that we have been losing for way too long. While the West was preaching about, Green New Deals and, oh my gosh, the sun is getting hot, our adversaries were gobbling up all the basic building blocks to advance things like artificial intelligence and quantum computing. We have now entered that fight. Thank goodness. So what does it all mean? I'll tell you in a minute. You ever get up in the morning and like, I wonder how today's going to go? I mean, is the pain going to put me out or not? Michael from Connecticut used to feel that way, but not anymore. Let me tell you his relief factor story. He wrote to me, Michael was dealing with elbow pain, which made everything that he used his hand and arm for really, really hard. Nothing he tried worked until he started with Relief Factor. Michael's elbow pain went away. Now, if he was part of the Canadian healthcare system, which is far superior, well, they could have killed him and he would have been out of pain, right? I mean, medical assistance in that pain. Anyway, if you don't like the MAID system in Canada and you don't want to live with the aches and pains that you have, you might want to see how Relief Factor, kind of a happy middle ground there. It's a daily It's drug-free supplement. It could help you feel better and live better. Join the over 1 million people who've turned to Relief Factor just like Michael. Try right now their 3-week quick start. It's $19.95, less than $1 a day. Don't let the pain keep you, from living the life you want to live every single day. Go to relieffactor.com right now. Call them 1-800-4-RELIEF. That's 1-800-4-RELIEF or relieffactor.com. I got to tell you, there was a blackout. I mean, I hate to laugh because it was, if you're stupid and you live in some foreign country like Spain, Portugal, or southern France, you weren't laughing when you had 12 hours minimum of no power, no communication. 60 million people had this blackout. Now, what caused this blackout? Well, just before the blackout occurred, Spain's energy mix ticking freaking time bomb. 78% solar wind sources, 11% nuclear, 3% natural gas. So they gutted their entire reliable base. Load energy, nuclear, hydro, gas. Instead, they're like, no, we're going on wind and solar because that's the future. Is it? Immediately, of course, some in the U.S. media insisted that green energy was not to blame for the disaster. Like this has happened all the time. Take this quote from Reuters. I think it's my favorite. And I quote, "The issue appears to be the management of renewables. Does it, Sparky? Well, that solves the mystery, except it doesn't. See, Spain and Portugal's grid collapsed like a house of cards because it was far too reliant on wind and solar power. Since those energy sources fluctuate, you need a completely reliable backup source, which they don't have. Why? Because their government's drunk on going green, tax the snot out of their nuclear plants, making them unprofitable, which then makes them want to shut down. So they shut great nuclear reactors down, which could have stabilized the grid, because they convinced themselves we're saving the planet. By what? Getting rid of 100% clean energy? Makes no sense. As one Spanish economist put it, and I quote, "The blackout in Spain was not caused by a cyber attack, but by the worst possible attack. The politicians against their own citizens." Look out, Sparky. Sounds like a civil war might be on your hands. Now, on the other hand, and I can't believe they're actually something positive to say about France, but parts of southern France that were affected by the blackout recovered their power quickly because they have a flexible power, because they also have nuclear power. France has by far the most nuclear power plants in Europe. They generate 70% of France's green needs. Okay, let's be more like France. Now, the fiasco in Spain and Portugal is not just a European problem. This is a preview of what the Democrats' Green New Deal-style policies will do to us as well. Former President Biden, Kamala Harris, AOC, they all have the same playbook here. Demonize nuclear power, completely phase out all fossil fuels, and double down on wind and solar. Look at California back in 2022, America's joke. Rolling blackouts during the heat wave because green fanatics spent years shutting down their nuclear and gas plants. Okay. Governor Gavin Newsom had to reactivate those dirty plants, 100% clean, to avoid total disaster. Now, way back, how old were you in 2017 when the U.S. Energy Department warned that the over-reliance on renewables threatens the stability of our nation's power grid? But Democrats, led by the Biden administration, they were just like, no, we got to go all green, 100% green. And they went with their policies anyway. Well, a few weeks ago, Google CEO Eric Schmidt dropped a bombshell stat before Congress saying AI's electricity demand set to skyrocket from 3% to 99% of our total electric generation. 75% would be incredible. 99%? I don't think we're eating anything that's cooked. At that point, we might not be eating anything at that point, except ride in the hero. Who's our hero? The guy we're going to talk to next. AI data centers already straining the grids worldwide. The U.S. is racing to keep up. Now, what is America going to do? Well, we get away from the left-wing policies. We start cleaning our energy up. And we start looking for additional actual power. Our Secretary of Energy joins us right after the break. Stand by. They're blacked out. I'm blacked out. What happened? The sun did it. I think the sun crosses borders. Jace Medical is doing their best to stay on top of your medical needs. Their Jace case, for example, is a pack of antibiotics because what if the medicine you need is on back order or it's sitting on a cargo ship halfway around the world? Yeah, a lot of our medicine made in China. Gee, I wonder what would happen if we ever got into like a war with China. Now, Jace Medical has their new parasite case. It's 90-day supply of essential medications, including ivermectin and other anti-parasiticals designed for situations where waiting simply isn't an option because nobody wants to deal with a parasite for too long. I don't know. We've really dealt with the Democrats for an awful long time, and maybe we should rub ivermectin all over them. Anyway, let's say you're traveling, a supply chain delay, whatever it is. You can have peace of mind by going to jace.com. The medical system is not built to withstand a whole lot of chaos. right now, I want you to go to jace.com. A lot of what is on order, a lot of the time, Jace Medical is giving you something most people never get, a safety net for those things, being well prepared and being in charge of your health for your whole family. Check them out today. It's jace.com, JASE.com. Enter the promo code Beck at checkout. Get a discount on your order. Promo code Beck at jace.com. Joining me now is an accomplished leader at the forefront of America's energy future, is U.S. Secretary of Energy Chris Wright. Chris is, he's right at the very front. He's a self-described energy nerd turned entrepreneur. He has spent decades driving innovation across oil, gas, solar, nuclear, geothermal energy. He also founded Pinnacle Technologies. That's a company that helped spark the shale gas revolution. He's dedicated his career to advancing affordable, reliable, secure energy for Americans, and he was nominated by President Trump to head up the Department of Energy and confirmed in February, now leads the charge for American energy dominance in a head-spinning time in world history. Secretary Wright, welcome to the program. How are you, sir?
Hey, Glenn, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I've been passionate about energy my whole life and thrilled to be in a new role these days.
So let me just take you back here. Let's start really with the Bush administration. There was something called the Loan Programs Office that was started under George W. Bush. And from what I've seen, this office from George W. Bush until 2020 had $42 billion of loans. But in the 3 months between Election Day 2024 and Inauguration Day 2025, between commitments, signed documents, and additional commitments, $93 billion of loans were made in a pretty accelerated rate. And this is an office that doesn't have really good history of making solid loans. Can you tell me what's happening?
Yeah, and Glenn, the time period, actually, that $43 billion was from the creation of the office over 14 years ago and all the way up to Election Day 2024. So that was $42 billion, 15 years up to the election day when Donald Trump gets reelected. So that's what they did in 15 years. And then Trump gets reelected, and in 76 days, almost 2.5 times as much money is either lent out or committed to be lent out.
Okay.
So clearly that's not responsible underwriting. That's not, we just discovered a bunch of great opportunities here for Americans.
Right.
That's just shoveling $100 billion out the door between an election day and the next inauguration.
For what purpose? I mean, because these are names like Solyndra, Sonova Energy, Rhyolite Ridge, Li-Cycle. These are not companies that did well in the long run. Why did they shovel $90+ billion out the door in 3 months?
I think it kind of shows that, that the justification for all this stuff is in this desperate existential fight against climate change. But of course, it isn't really. It's about money and it's about power. And so this is funding to what they thought were, desired interests or maybe aligned businesses. But if they were great loans and safe and reasonable to do, why didn't they do them in the 2.5 years from when the IRA and the Infrastructure and Jobs Act was passed? Why did they wait till after Election Day when they lost the election to realize, now we'll lend a bunch of money? And as you mentioned, there were sort of two categories. One was to companies with very little capital backing and successful business on their own right. A lot of that is probably going to be losses for the American taxpayers. That'll be on my watch, not on their watch, because the money just got shoved out the door right at the end. And the others were loans to large Stellantis, 100-year-old auto manufacturing companies, or Rivian, a giant company, 16% owned by Amazon. That's got tons of money already. Why do they need low-cost government money? They've got a successful business idea. Why not access the capital markets?
So can we get any of this money back?
We're working hard at that. Some of these are commitments, and if they're not legally in compliance with commitments, we can not close those deals. Unfortunately, a lot of them are closed, signed legal things, and we will follow the rule of law. So I don't know the exact answer to how much is gone, and it's just irresponsible taxpayer funds that I can't do anything about. There definitely is a large amount, tens of billions of dollars, that we can do something about, and we're on that every day and trying to grow that number, of course.
So we're looking at billions of dollars probably lost, misspent. We have seen things like the Strategic Oil Reserve depleted. We have seen them shut down pipelines. What do you look at and say, this is the most damaging, that is going to be the hardest to reset, that happened in the last 4 years?
Oh, well, one is, if you look at electricity prices and energy prices in general in the United States versus Europe, they were not that different 15 or 20 years ago. And then after the financial crisis, Europe really went off on this crazy green dream. And I put green in quotes because there's nothing really environmental about it. But they spent a ton of money to mandate and force their energy systems. And because of that, European energy prices are now twice or more what they are in the United States. And here's the economic data. Since 2010, Europe has grown less than 10%. The EU, in dollar terms, the United States has grown over 80%. Like, that's the difference of a reasonable energy policy and a poor energy policy. Europe just outsourced all their manufacturing, impoverished their citizens. Now they got huge political upheaval, the ramifications of that. Just clearly the wrong path. President Biden got elected, and the Democrats unfortunately passed hundreds of billions of dollars to follow Europe to a road we know where it leads. Heck, California's already trod that road and has doubled the electricity prices in California of the rest of the country. And every industry and now even people are leaving the state of California. If you know it leads there, why rush down that road? And there's a lot of people angry at me to try to stop us from going down that road and to go down President Trump's road of choice and opportunity and low-cost, reliable energy. That would seem uncontroversial.
Yeah, it would be, especially when you have the facts. I mean, look what happened in Spain and Portugal. What was it, last week or 10 days ago, when the entire country, and they're blaming it on the sun, and you're like, okay, well, the sun, the rays go past those two countries' borders. You know, the sun spills into other countries. Why aren't the other countries really affected by this? This is the arrogance of the left, where they are making our grids more and more vulnerable. And you cannot be a first world country if you don't have reliable energy and a reliable grid.
That sounds like a basic truth, Glenn. It's just so much common sense. And look, if you talk to an American on the street, no one will disagree with that. So the crazy thing is that the Democrats have been able to sell this as it's cheaper energy, cleaner, cheaper, and we're going to save the world from climate change. And all three of those statements are just patently false. But they've obviously been great marketers because they've sold that agenda. Now, once they started to implement that agenda in just the last few years, obviously Americans rebelled. Americans stood up and said, we're going to bring back common sense. And we want affordable, reliable energy. And we want jobs in our country. And that's why President Trump won election. And I credit the president for campaigning overwhelmingly on the centrality of energy to your economy, to your national security, to the well-being of your citizens. This president ran on that issue, successfully sold the American people there's a better direction. We don't need to go this road. And look, I was so honored to be picked by President Trump to come in here and help restore common sense and sanity to our energy policies.
So, first of all, let me go back to SPR, the Strategic Oil Reserve.
Yes.
Has that been filled back up again?
No, it is not. So, yeah, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is, it's about 750 million barrels of oil in strategic. This isn't for timing markets or,
Correct.
Filling it or unfilling. It's for when a very bad day happens. The world literally runs on oil. If you don't have oil, you're screwed in everything you do, economics, defense, anything, healthcare. And so we created a strategic petroleum reserve for that very rainy day. And in 2022, coming into those midterm elections, the Democrats saw inflation was a problem. Things weren't going well from them. And they drained nearly half of the strategic petroleum reserve to make those midterm elections go well for them. Sadly, it did help them. In the short term, they flooded the market with oil, reduced the price of oil in the short term, but at the cost of U.S. strategic positioning. And they damaged the facilities in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve by draining them so fast. So I have a few challenges. We have to spend over $100 million to repair the damage of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve that wasn't built for that. And by design, it's much slower to fill it than to drain it. It will take us going flat out. It will take us 4, 5, 6 years to refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We are dead set committed to do it, but we've compromised our national security for years to get a little bit of an electoral advantage in 2022. Energy is the infrastructure of life. You can't use it for politics.
So, Chris, when you're looking at these things, and we look at things short term because we have 4-year cycles, and you cannot run a country on 4-year cycles. You just can't. You're putting some of these things into play now. Is there anything we can do to make sure that we can't just reverse this? If should an election go not our way in 3 years from now?
So there are a lot of things. And in the administration, in the Interior Department, in the Commerce Department, in the Environmental Protection Agency, in my Department of Energy, there are a lot of levers that have been used. In the Biden administration, they called it an all-of-government effort to fight climate change. They didn't do anything meaningful on climate change at all, but they did disrupt the American energy system and drive incentives to degrade the American energy system. So we're repealing as many of those as possible, but we are going to do some things that are long-term and that are structural, that will withstand the next time Democrats come to power. Now, those take time, and they're not done yet, and some of them I probably shouldn't even talk about.
No, don't.
But it'll all be in the public domain or whatever. But I do think we have a committed administration from the president on down across the cabinets that have seen the risk the United States has been put at. And look, we have emerging opportunities. We want to reshore manufacturing in this country. AI is going to transform lives in the next 4 years, and we need to win the AI arms race, meaning lead it here and not have it led by China. Not just for economic reasons, not just for science, but for national security reasons. So yes, you will see a dramatically different trajectory in these 4 years, thanks to President Trump's leadership. And I think we'll leave behind different public opinion and different ability for the left to come back in and damage the energy system when they get elected again.
So I want to ask you 2 questions before we break. First, so are you for something like the REINS Act? Do you have any comments on the REINS Act passing, which would give the power back to Congress and away from the deep state that are just running these agencies that can make their own rules up as they go?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, you go down this rabbit hole because we've grown the power of the deep state. People that are not elected, that no one knows, have this enormous power to put barriers in the way of American lives and American businesses. So absolutely, if we can rein in the power of the federal government and at least make the power they have to be voted on in both houses of Congress and signed by a president, that would be enormous progress. And God bless Mike Lee's tireless effort to move this cause forward. Yes, I'm 100% behind that.
All right. The last question before the break is, we're seeing changes being made. We saw what was happening under Joe Biden. And I remember during Obama, I think he said we were going to stop drilling in maybe in the Gulf, but I know in California and off the shores. And I remember talking to people that built oil rigs, and they said these things are on leases forever. You don't just cancel that and then get it back 2 years later. That'll be on lease for 20 years someplace else in the world. Are we back to being able to produce the oil that we were producing prior to the Biden administration, to where Trump had us oil
independent?
Yes. Are we there?
Absolutely. We are there. We are there. The enabling factors are there. And before this year is over, the U.S. will be a net exporter of oil, will be the largest, and we in fact are today the largest net exporter of natural gas in the world. But all that was at risk, and all of that was chipped away during the Biden administration. Thank God there was so much development that could happen on private lands. If you squished it off federal lands, it moved to private lands. And some of it moved overseas, imported energy. If you stop producing oil and gas in the United States, you don't reduce the demand for it. You just mean it's going to be produced somewhere else, which means somewhere else gets the jobs, the economic security, the cash flow from that activity. It's nothing to do with climate change. It's always justified in the name of climate change. It's not related to that.
All right. Back in just a second, I want to talk to you about nuclear energy and the race for AI and ASI, artificial superintelligence, in a minute. So we're talking to the Energy Secretary, Chris Wright. And Chris, I want to play you a snippet from an interview I did with President Trump a couple of weeks ago. Listen to this.
As you probably know, with AI, the one thing is that you need massive amounts of electricity. Energy. And I'm getting it for them. And I'm getting immediate approval. And I'm letting them build their electric plant. In other words, they're becoming really a producer of electricity. So
nuclear plants?
They can use nuclear if they want for the energy. They need to create electricity.
Because Eric Schmidt said yesterday or the day before, we use 3%. They use 3% of the power. They're going to need, by 2027, 99% of the power.
They need more electricity than we have right now in our country, powering everything.
And you'll cut all of the red tape and get that built?
We're going to get it done very quickly. We're going to let them become utilities, actually. We're going to let them build their own electric plant.
So can we concentrate on that? That didn't get any play anywhere. And I think that was the most stunning thing I've ever heard from any president, that he will privatize nuclear energy because we must have nuclear energy if we are going to be in the race for AI. Can you give me any updates, anything that you know is coming, and what kind of energy plants are we talking about? Are they responsible for all of their own infrastructure? Will this affect the infrastructure of, everybody else's electricity?
So AI will be done in a combination of all of those ways. But thankfully for President Trump, he understands it's key that it's here in America, it's driven by private capital, and that the government gets out of the way and enables these enormous private investments. Because part of the public is nervous. During the Biden administration, electricity prices on average went up well more than 20%, with hardly any growth in the production of electricity. We have to do the opposite. We have to deliver significant growth in the production of electricity without raising the price of it. But can this be done? Of course this can be done. But President Trump is focused on that. If businesses say, hey, I want to build a natural gas plant, I want to build a nuclear power plant, our answer is, how can we help you? It's going to be safe. It's going to be done thoughtfully. But another key criterion, Glenn, and you were getting at that, is if you're going to use a gigawatt of power for what you're doing, let's build a little bit more than a gigawatt.
Yes.
So not only is the AI supplied at that data center, but there's a little bit more electricity available for the community around it. I believe we can win the AI arms race by a massive expansion in our energy production and stop the crazy rises we've seen in utility prices. And there's so many common sense things to be done there.
Chris, this is something, honestly, this will be akin to building Hoover Dam and everything else that happened that brought electricity into the center of the country during the Great Depression. This is possibly the biggest energy project I've ever heard in America because of the scope of it. 99% of the energy that we currently make will be used by these server farms. By 2027, they need that. China doesn't have the rules. They don't care if it's safe. They'll build coal. They're building everything. We haven't built a new nuclear plant. We can't seem to build our own refineries for either rare earth minerals or for gasoline. Is this going to change, and how rapidly can you get this? Can you get this done before the president leaves office?
So large infrastructure does take time, but it is amazing how many shovels in the ground you will see for power plants being built, data centers being built, refining for mines, for minerals, rare earth minerals, and other critical minerals. New mines are going to be opened. This will be probably the greatest large-scale infrastructure building and boom the next 4 years than any administration in my lifetime.
Right.
Only possible because of President Trump smartly enabling this, but all of that giant construction will be funded almost entirely by private capital. This is not putting Americans in debt. This is unleashing private capital to drive jobs, grow energy production, and make our society better.
As it should be. Let me ask you, the grid, our grid is just so wildly outdated. Even the Texas grid, which stands alone, has real issues to it. We have now hackers, we have EMPs that we're worried about. What are the things that you are most focused on addressing for the state of our overall grid?
Yes, well, you hit a lot of them. Grid stability. The first thing we have to do is stop digging the hole, right? The last administration was trying to close coal plants as fast as they can.
Amen.
We need more reliable, affordable electricity, and we're going to shut down existing plants. They want to breach dams and take down large-scale dams and take that electricity off the market as well.
Are you stopping that?
The first thing we're doing.
Are you stopping
yes.
that? Good.
If there's an effort to stop that, and I'm convinced we will succeed. We will stop the taking down of large dams. We will stop the closure of coal plants. And we will enable the building of new nuclear plants, new natural gas plants. Of course, new solar is being built and will continue to grow as well. Geothermal is an energy resource that's about to take off. So I'm worried about generation capacity. I'm worried about sensible regulation in the electricity grid so that these investments can flow. And we are worried, and intermittence, the more solar and wind you put on your grid means sometimes you get electricity, but when the wind stops, something has to turn on quickly. And when the wind blows, something has to turn down quickly. That's destabilizing to the grid. At low levels of penetration, it's not a big problem, but if you force that on the grid, you force up prices. California's the poster child of that. Twice as expensive to buy electricity in California than in the rest of the country, and California produces well less electricity than Florida. Florida's got a little more than half the population, produces 25% more electricity than California, and at half the cost per unit of electricity. That's like sober governance versus just crazy left-wing politics. Energy is too important to be destroyed by crazy top-down left-wing political ideas.
Secretary Wright, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. You are so far a little undervalued, I think. People need to sing your praises a little more. You're doing a spectacular job. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Honored to be working for this wonderful country.
Yeah, thank you. We'll have more on this and everything else we talked about on tomorrow's radio program. We will see you there. From Dallas, good night, America.